ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930 present The Drive.
It is Monday, September 25th. Your drive begins now on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. We're here until 6 o'clock this evening. I'm going to take your text this hour, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. We are past Virginia Tech. Marshall with the victory over the weekend, 24-17 over the Hokies. So next up for Thundering Herd, the Old Dominion Monarchs. That's going to be a 3:30 kick. We go on the air Saturday with our pregame coverage at 12:30. And I'm going to give you a chance to win tickets all this week to go see the Herd take on Old Dominion. If you've got our text line programmed in your phone, you're already halfway there. If not, let me give it to you, 304-396-TALK. 304-396-8255. Since it is Marshall and Old Dominion week, we start out with our Monday question. Who's going to win? Give me the score. Predict the score of Marshall and Old Dominion, and that's going to be your entry into our ticket giveaway. We will do that after the show. We'll take one random text and make them the winner. So looking forward to hearing from you. Again, the text line is 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. That's our number to be a part of today's edition of the show. So coming up today, we're going to hear from, in just a few minutes, the head coach of the Marshall Thundering Herd, Dan D'Antoni. Hoops in Huntington is coming up on Thursday. Should be a fun time. It's year number two for this. Last year, Herd took over downtown Huntington in front of Pullman Square on 3rd Avenue, so the men and the women are going to be taking over the street once again. So the head coach himself, Dan D'Antoni, will join us here in the next few minutes. We're going to talk about that event, of course, kind of get a first look from him as far as what we can expect for the upcoming season. So I'm looking forward to that. And a little bit later on in the program, we're going to try to hear from Coach Huff. He had his media availability earlier in the day. And I also had a chance to attend Kim Caldwell's media availability. She's the new women's basketball coach at Marshall. A lot of excitement for both men's and women's basketball. So we've got all of that lined up. And, of course, as I mentioned, your text. And, again, we'll open up the text line for you at 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. And, of course, we're looking for your prediction. What's the score today of the game this week? What's it going to be? Is it going to be a blowout? And don't give me the argument that Herd's a big favorite, because Coach Huff is already calling that rat poison. He's been on social media calling that rat poison already. You know how he gets. Don't say anything like don't say the Herd's a favorite. Don't say anything like that at all, because he's going to call it rat poison. So we've got that coming up, and we will hear from Dan in just a few minutes. But there are a couple things that we'll touch on later on the show a little bit more. But first up, Marshall's game against NC State now set for a 2 p.m. kickoff from Carter Finley Stadium in Raleigh, North Carolina. And the game's going to be broadcast nationally on the CW. National television, the CW. I have not watched the CW game yet, so I'm interested to see how that plays out. And, of course, if you can't go, that's where you're going to be able to watch the game, on the CW. The Herd also receiving votes in the latest coaches poll, so the Thundering Herd starting to get more attention. And on top of all of that, Rasheen Ali named Sunbelt Conference Offensive Player of the Week, as he had a key point. 2 times, actually. He had 2 key moments in that 24-17 victory over Virginia Tech. In that second quarter, scores that 56-yard touchdown run, which gave Marshall a 14-10 lead. And then in the third quarter, following what was a Virginia Tech pass interference penalty, he had a 61-yard run into the end zone. And that, of course, I checked that, not in the end zone, but in the red zone. 61-yard run put him in the red zone, and then they got the 1-yard score. So the Thundering Herd now receiving votes. Rasheen Ali, still one of the top running backs in the country, getting a lot of attention. And the Thundering Herd can continue on Saturday, maybe building itself up with a win in conference, no less, against Old Dominion. So we'll get your text in. We'll start doing that now at 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Texts are already coming in. First prediction of the day, Marshall's going to win this one 28-14. And the next text comes in and says Marshall's going to win 28-17. So 28 points seems to be the theme so far. 28 points, is that going to be enough to beat Old Dominion? Will Marshall have to score more? Or will Marshall's stingy defense keep Old Dominion at bay? Or is this going to be a blowout? We never know. So the text line is where you will enter to win 2 tickets to go see the Herd take on Old Dominion by answering our question of the day. What's going to be the score? What's the prediction for Marshall and Old Dominion? So when we continue from break, we'll come back. We're going to hear from Dan D'Antoni, the head coach of the Marshall Thundering Herd. Hoops in Huntington coming up on Thursday. So Dan will tell us more about that. Later on, we'll hear from Coach Huff, also from Kim, the new head coach of the Marshall. I almost want to call her Kim Stevens. I have to break myself of that. Absolutely. Because now she is Kim Caldwell. So I'm breaking myself. I keep wanting to default to Kim Stevens, so I apologize to Coach for that. But Kim Caldwell, the new head coach of the Marshall Thundering Herd, the women, we'll talk to her. We'll hear from Dan when we continue on this edition of The Drive, ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
This is The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Well, coming up on Thursday, it's going to be Hoops in Huntington. Downtown Huntington, Marshall basketball will take over in front of Pullman Square on 3rd Avenue. It's going to feature both the men and women's basketball teams. There's going to be a lot of fun activities for the kids. And, of course, you get a chance to see the Thundering Herd for the first time. And join us to tell us a little bit more about the event and, of course, the upcoming season as the head coach of the Marshall men's basketball team, Dan D'Antoni, who, man, you're getting to talk to the media all day today. I know that's your favorite thing to do. That is your favorite thing to do during basketball season.
Well, I really don't mind because I get to talk about our program and the young men that I try to help and a good staff. So it's really not that bad, Paul. I enjoy it, really.
So you got to really get going today officially, and you mentioned in your availability earlier that there are a lot of changes. Now, when we talk about changes, it's not necessarily what Marshall basketball is about, but the faces that'll be running the program when we actually get to some games.
Well, that's one thing good, although this is really, I told someone, this is really the first team that's kind of built to play as like I coached in high school, which is very aggressive defense that will come after you all the time. This team has got size and it's got good athleticism throughout, and I think it's really conducive to have a good defending team. That's what we're hoping for. Rebounding team that can push the ball forward quickly. So we're looking forward to good basketball. That'll be exciting, fun to watch and support.
Now, you don't have Tavion Kinsey on the squad anymore, and he was by default just how his personality was. He was a leader on this team. Who do you expect to really step up and maybe fill that leadership role for the team this year?
Well, it's probably our biggest challenge is filling and see who steps forward for leadership. We've been it was kind of evident. There was always what's the word I'm trying to get, but apparent, whichever who was going to be the next person, step up from John Elmore to Jared West and then Tavion Kinsey. And this one, because of really the portal, Cam has only been with us for a year, but he's probably the senior member, and we're probably going to rely on his experience from VMI where he played, and then of course playing for us last year. But normally we always had someone that was here or has been here for 4 years to kind of be the next person. And now with the portal and everything, we've had a new kid, Kevon from Eastern Shores, Maryland Eastern Shores, and Cam Crawford, who came from Indiana State, and Nate Martin, who came from Texas State. They're all new. They're all really the ones that have the experience and the age on them. We have Obina, who will really help stabilize things, and Jacob Connors coming into that, and Wyatt Fricks. They're all coming into that, but they haven't had. We don't have that seasoned leadership that has been here for a few years that we've had in the past.
On the flip side, though, it's always fun. New challenge for you to get out there, a new group of guys with some veteran leadership, or at least some leadership coming back and some experience. So, it's always something to have to be excited about. I guess what I'm looking for here is, it's always a new challenge.
Well, yeah, and I love coaching, so I look forward to this challenge. And one thing I'll say, and I'm almost positive this is going to happen. This is really a close-knit group. Almost all the way through, they spend a lot of time in and around each other. And they've done a lot of things like they ran the 5K with the veterans at the airport. They did it together. They've done a lot of community work together, and they hang out on weekends. They go to the football games. They help with the women's volleyball, and they been a part of it. They've stayed together probably better than any team that I've had thus far. So I think that's going to really push forward and solidify our leadership quickly, and that as this season goes through, that the leadership and the people that step forward will do what Marshall expects to do, and that's put on a good basketball show.
Well, the fans get to see the Herd a little early. Hoops at Huntington is coming up on Thursday, and you really got a kick out of this event last year. What'd you like about it last year? And, of course, what can we expect this year when there's even a dunk take out there? I hope you're not in a dunk take.
They have. I unvolunteered myself. I told them, I said, you only get me down once, I might drown or something. I don't know. But, Christian Spears came up with that idea. It was a novelty type of event, and it turned into a really good boost for the men and women's basketball team. Our fan support from the area in Huntington came out, and it was a good night. It was a fun night. I think everybody enjoyed themselves. Young people get to mingle. And one thing about the two teams that both women's and the men's programs, they mingle well with young kids, and it's just a good overall family event. I think they're adding food this year, which will make it even better. And I think got a little weather issue that we're dealing with. We're going to hope we can pull it off Thursday. I said, as I kind of jokingly, that I had called upstairs to see that I could get a clear or at least a dry day. And he hasn't returned my call yet, but I'm expecting it. So hopefully we're going to be able to pull that off on Thursday.
And it's a free event, so Herd fans get a chance to come out. As you mentioned, there'll be food. There will be a skills challenge, basketball competition, three-point shot, all the fun things like that. But I think the big thing here is just to get everyone excited, because down the stretch, I think a lot of Herd fans realize your squad was playing some exciting basketball, especially when we got to conference time, and it was great to see those crowds return to the Cam Henderson Center.
Well, one thing, Marshall's always supported their program and basketball program here, and I just hope that they will do that. These guys are really – you have to be a fan of Marshall, just Marshall, whatever. And that's kind of the way I am. I don't – whether any sport, doesn't matter. If they put on a jersey that has Marshall on it, I'm supporting them. I'm behind them, and I'm going to be there. And these guys have earned that too. They go out every day. They played a lot of basketball this summer to prep for this year. There's a lot of excitement, and that's kind of generated from the athletic department administration, led by Christian Spears, and also Brad Smith. Just the excitement that he's brought to the university. You could see it in Saturday's football game, which was a lot of people coming. You could feel the energy in the crowd that were there for the soccer match there later. I mean, those are two big events, full houses, and women's volleyball one Friday. There's a lot of positive feeling and push around the university that's stronger than I've felt since I've been here as a coach. It kind of reminds me of that more positive push that we used to get when I played here, and then with Mike's team thereafter that I was here for. But it is exciting. I'm looking forward to it. A lot of challenges. It's going to be a process, but we're going to be positive. We're going to get through it, and I know in the end it'll all smooth out. Leadership will step forward. The talent's there. We'll see if we can't get the ball in the basket more than the other team.
Dan D'Antoni with me, the head coach of the Marshall Thundering Herd. Hoops in Huntington coming up 7 o'clock Thursday, downtown Huntington, Pullman Square in front of the square on 3rd Avenue. Dan's promised the weather's going to be great, right? No worries there. No worries.
Well, I got the call in now. He hasn't called me back yet, but I'm sure upstairs he's going to call me, and we'll see if we can't get it this Thursday. If not, he'll find a suitable time to make sure that we have a good time with it.
It's a fun event, and I'm excited for it once again. And I think it's great to get Herd fans excited a little early, something unique for the kids. And also, if not you, who do we put in the dunk tank? And I'm not volunteering either.
Well, I think Cordy Jackson would be a good one. I've always told him he was a really good point guard here, and he's really helping me a lot. And since we always argue, let's see, Greg White was from Mullins, Mike was from Mullins, I'm from Mullins, he was from Oak Hill. So that probably makes him the 4th best point guard, right? So I think we put him in the tank and dunk that Oak Hill thing down in the tank. But I think, like I said, it'll be enjoyable. I might get into the dunk contest and get to where I dunk it. So all I got to do is get the goal down to about 6 feet. I think I can enter that.
I think you can get that to happen. I mean, why you should have the stroke, I would think.
Well, I always said that that's the way it should be. They always trying to level the playing field for everybody. Well, it's unfair that I was born 6 foot. So if I'm playing Obina, he drives in there. It should be at 11 foot because he got a 7'3" reach. And then as I drive, the goal should come down real fast so that I can compete and dunk up as high or get above the rim like he does. So, that's only fair. I think that's the way life is now. So let's make it fair for me. Give me that 6 foot goal. I really think I can win Bill one.
Dan D'Antoni, looking forward to it. We'll see you on Thursday. Hopefully you win that dunk contest, and you know what? Maybe you can win them all, a 3-point contest as well. Sure. I mean, why not? Do it all.
Well, what I want to do, Paul, is have the city of Huntington to come out and enjoy a good evening with a good bunch of young men and young women going out there and promoting the game of basketball. And looking forward to the season. It's a tough schedule, and we should have a lot of enjoyment, see what we can do and how we prepare for March.
Dan, looking forward to it. We'll see you on Thursday.
All right, Paul, baby, let's go. Let's go, Herd.
That's Dan D'Antoni, head coach of the Marshall Thundering Herd. The men and the women going to be on 3rd Avenue in front of Pullman Square for Hoops in Huntington. It gets underway 7 o'clock on Thursday. We're going to hear from Coach Huff in just a few minutes. Also, later on, we'll hear from the women's coach of the Marshall Thundering Herd, Kim Caldwell, when we continue on this edition of The Drive, ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
This is The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
We continue on with this Monday edition of The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. It was a great weekend on Saturday. Marshall had two big matches. First of all, the Herd gets the victory over Virginia Tech 24-17. Over 31,000 in attendance at Joan C. Edwards Stadium. It looked great. Atmosphere was fun. Hopefully we can do it again for Old Dominion. And then afterwards, it was sold out. It was over 3,000, new record for Veterans Memorial Soccer Field, the Hoops Family Field, the Vet. Marshall gets the victory 1-0 in soccer over UCF. So a lot of good things happening over the weekend for the Thundering Herd. And, of course, it's now a new week. Coach Huff is ready to move on. We're getting ready for conference play. It's Marshall. It's Old Dominion. We've seen this before. Every time that these two teams meet, it's going to be competitive. That's always been the case, it feels like. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers just to kind of put that into perspective. But it always feels like it's a challenge for the Thundering Herd. And that's something that Coach Huff talked about today in his media availability to the Sunbelt media, is this one is always a challenge.
It's going to be a challenge for whatever reason. If it's maybe Ricky and I butt head, but this game between ODU and Marshall, you can throw out the schedules, you can throw out the stats. It's always tough. 2 years ago when they came up here, we went into overtime. Last year was a battle. I think, again, it's two really good football teams with really good players and coaches, really good chess matches, a really good environment. I think that's what the Sun Belt and our conference is really about. It's about teams, regardless of what records and all of those things say. It's about teams playing the game on the field on game days. And we got a really tough challenge coming up this weekend for that as well.
So tough challenge, as he mentioned, and you look at these matchups, usually it is for Marshall. Now, Marshall comes out as a favorite. Marshall comes out as a favorite in this one. That's what the odds makers are saying. Herd's going to win this game. You know how odds makers are. They'll lay out the number, and it can change depending on what comes out about the game. But for the most part, Marshall's got to be considered the favorite, right? Well, remember last year when Marshall beat Notre Dame and then Marshall was considered the favorite going into Bowling Green? Well, that stuff's rat poison now to Coach Huff. Marshall comes out as the favorite. Coach Huff's already been on social media. Look, that's rat poison. Don't want to hear that. Don't want to be taking any bit of that because we've been in this situation before, and he's trying to make sure that his squad is ready for this game. Doesn't matter if it's Huntington High on the field. It doesn't matter if it's Alabama on the field. It's the next opponent, and we've seen this before. We're hoping to avoid a repeat and avoiding the rat poison at the same time.
Well, we've been here before. We beat a team that everybody said was, a good team, a big game, and we didn't respond the right way. And we talked about it as a staff. It's not about falling into the rat poison. What we didn't do is we didn't execute the game afterwards. Fumbled the ball twice on the goal line versus Bowling Green. We had some communication busts in the back end. I think emotionally, physically, we were ready to play. We just did things that you can't do. If we did those things 2 weeks earlier, you guys probably wouldn't have me on this call. You probably just skip me. But we've got to go back and do the same thing. We've got to go back and clean up the mistakes that we made last week. We got to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a situation this week against a really good opponent where we're turning the ball over and missing tackles and missing assignments. We could play a high school team next week, and if we do those things, we'll put ourselves in a tough spot. So
hopefully they're not going to play a high school team. Hopefully, because there are pretty good ones around here. Huntington High is really good. Martinsburg's really good. Cabell Midland's really good. Ashland's really good. So thankfully we're not playing a high school team, but Old Dominion, still a challenge for the Thundering Herd. And honestly, I think this coaching staff is stressing the fact that just because you beat Virginia Tech doesn't mean you can just roll out there and beat Old Dominion. I think the lesson from last year is definitely one that's getting repeated again and again and again from Coach Huff and his staff.
I think the learning lesson is not about, you beat a big team, is there a fall off? It's about whatever you did to put yourself in position to win one game. You got to improve on that and continue to do those things each week. And in this conference, it's tough because it's not a, hey, well, if we could just get to this team or that team, we're okay. Every week's a battle. This will be probably, and this is not coach speak, this will be the toughest, game we've had all season, just because of the combination of where we are in the season, schematical design that ODU uses on offense and defense. They stress you. Obviously, both teams and programs have familiarity with each other. Sometimes you're better off playing a team you've never played before because you can't really get caught up into, well, they did this last year or they did this. So it's going to be a challenge, and that's no disrespect to any of our opponents that we've already played. It's just as the season goes on and you get more and more film, you get more and more tendencies, you get more and more, reps, things get harder and harder. And this is going to be one of those challenging weeks.
Coach Huff speaking to the media earlier today. And one final thing from Coach Huff today. It is homecoming. Homecoming is a big week. And usually you dial up an opponent that you think's an easy win, right? That used to be what homecoming was all about. Hey, we're going to have homecoming. Everybody's going to come in. People maybe out of town. We're going to dial up an opponent. Marshall, the opponent. It shouldn't matter. Marshall's going to get the win because this is the opponent that is the homecoming opponent. And that means they're not that good. Coach Huff doesn't want to hear any of that noise. Of course, he's excited about homecoming and understands the importance of homecoming. But at the same time, he wants it known now. He did not have anything to do in the selection of Old Dominion as the homecoming opponent for the Thundering Herd.
I wish they'd let me pick the homecoming opponent because you automatically give them a little bit of firepower. But just so everybody knows, I did not pick ODU for homecoming. Okay, that was not my choice. I have a lot of control around here over very little. So, but again, I think, whenever you get a chance to acknowledge, bring back, reunite, bring importance to an event, a weekend, obviously homecoming for the fans and families is always important because a lot of people don't always get to come back to their schools and universities as much as they'd like to. Homecoming is an opportunity where you can kind of pinpoint a date on the calendar and say, hey, we're going to go back for the weekend and spend the weekend there. I think, again, Huntington is a hidden gem. There's a lot of positive going on right now here at Marshall and in this community. Last weekend was a phenomenal experience. You got, an unbelievable football game and an unbelievable crowd. And you turn around, you have soccer 1 versus 2 that night. Then you turn around, you have women's soccer, like 4 versus whatever they are. So again, I think anytime you can continue to bring people back to this great city and this great community, it just continues to remind people how special this place is. It helps us in recruiting when we get, multiple people back. I think it helps from an administrative standpoint when you start to get people back to see some of the positive that's going on. The football game is still the football game. We still got to go out and play really well. And execute consistently. But for the community and the fans, I think it's a really good opportunity to kind of pinpoint and acknowledge, the return of a lot of alumni, friends, and family.
That's Coach Huff on homecoming. Saturday, Marshall, the homecoming opponent is Old Dominion. Now, one other interesting thing from this game Saturday, I don't know if you've been on social media. If you don't follow social media that much, there's a really cool video. It's of a drone flyby over the stadium as Marshall was taking the field, as the Thundering Herd was making its way on the field. Drone flyover showing the herd take the field and showing the crowd. It was really well done. It was beautifully shot. I mean, it's a great video. Can't do that. I saw that and I thought, wait a minute. Is that part of the inset? Yeah, there's rule changes this year. I don't know if you're familiar with the rule changes, but there have been some rule changes and drones are part of that. Well, The Sun Belt Conference issued public reprimands not only to Marshall but to James Madison University due to some violations of NCAA rules during their respective football games, the release read. The violations resulted from the in-game use of communication equipment in the team area for James Madison and a drone flying over the field when squad members were present during team introductions for Marshall. That's what the release says. The Sun Belt Conference considers this matter concluded. So basically, angry text maybe. I'm sure there was an angry text sent. Can't do that. Shame on you. It was a cool video. I'm sure the Herd's going to take the slap on the wrist. It was a cool video. It really was. Kudos to the Herd for that video. They're going to get a lot more out of that. So I think they're going to take the public reprimand from the league for the, air quotes here, the rules violation. I mean, well, technically it was a rules violation. But it was a drone flying over in a publicity shot. I think we can consider this one closed. But the league issuing the reprimand today. Don't do that. 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. We're going to get your text in because we're going to give you a chance to win tickets to go see the Herd take on Old Dominion. Texter wrote in and said today's prediction for the score on Saturday is going to be 42-17 Marshall with a go Herd. Also, got a question from text. Texter asks about Charles Montgomery. Said that he noticed that the texter noticed that that Montgomery had 0 catches. Did he play this past Saturday? He was not in the game on Saturday. I double-checked the participation report from the final box just to make sure, and he was listed as one of the players that did not play. So Montgomery not on the field for the Thundering Herd in the win against Virginia Tech. We're going to give you a chance to win tickets to go see the Herd take on Old Dominion this Saturday. In our text contest today, it's real simple. It's really not a contest. It's more like it's a participation award. You tell me what the score is going to be on Saturday. You could be right. You could be wrong. If you're right, you should be looking at Vegas. If you're wrong, you can still win tickets. So 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. When we continue, I want to hear from the new head coach of the Marshall women's basketball team, Kim Caldwell, when we continue on this edition of The Drive, ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
This is The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Our text line is still open. We're taking your prediction for the game between Marshall and Old Dominion. And we're going to give one of our lucky texters a pair of tickets to go see the Herd take on Old Dominion this Saturday. Text line is 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Texter writes in and says Marshall is going to win the game 27-14. Also, texter writes in and says Marshall 36, Old Dominion 13, go Herd. You can text in as well, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. As I mentioned, jam-packed show today because we got a chance to talk to a lot of people, including Marshall women's basketball coach Kim Caldwell. And her squad can't take the court officially for practice just yet, so they're just wrapping up their preseason activities. And Coach explained why we're a little closer to – she feels like they're behind. That was kind of the vibe I was getting from her today. She really feels like the team is behind. They're not, but she comes from a different schedule. That's something that we talked about here, and you'll hear that in a minute. But really, Thundering Herd on the women's side, getting ready to go, wrapping up preseason.
We don't get to start practice until Monday because – scheduling, our opener game is not until November 9th on the road versus George Mason. So our practice gets pushed back because of that. And so we're wrapping up our preseason this week. It's been a tough preseason. It's been good. A lot of growing pains, a lot of learning from everyone, myself, the girls, a lot of adjusting. But we had a great one today. I think we're kind of finally starting to hit our stride as far as leadership and effort and the standard and the expectations. And so we'll finish this week. We have Hoops in Huntington on Thursday, so we hope that you guys can come. Our girls are looking forward to that. And then Monday we get going.
So Monday they get going, but of course Hoops in Huntington. She said she can't wait for it. She's excited about it. She also was excited about the game on Saturday against Virginia Tech. She's not used to that, right? Remember, Glenville State's not Marshall. I mean, no disrespect, but Marshall's a lot bigger than Glenville State. So some new experiences for the coach, and she's really been taking it all in.
Yeah, I can't wait. Saturday was awesome. Just having the girls walk around. That was the first football game I got to go to. And as many people that would just stop and say, hey, coach, good luck, coach. We're excited to see you play. And how many people would stop our players and say they're going to buy season tickets and they're excited and they can't wait to watch us. And that's at a football game. So when we're around our basketball family, I'm really excited about it. And our players have talked a lot about what it was like last year and the 3-point shooting competition and the 2-on-2 and how sometimes we didn't do very well. So I think we didn't really win anything last year. So they're getting competitive about it. They want to make some trophies. And so they're excited about it. And then we hope that there's a really good turnout.
Yeah, I want to be competitive as well. I mean, if you're getting up for Hoops in Huntington and you want to go out there and make a statement, that means you're jacked and ready to go for the season. Now, I asked Coach, she talked about earlier in her opening statement, just some of the things about, the challenges getting ready. So I was kind of curious at that point, what is the biggest challenge so far?
There's been a lot. The biggest one for me has been the calendar. No summer access in Division II. And so we had 6 weeks with them there. And so you have all this extra time, but when it's all said and done, you still always feel like you're behind. And then first start of practice is going to be next Monday, but Division II, it's not until October 15th. So I kind of feel like we're behind where we should be for the first official day of practice, but we're not because normally our practice is not for another month. And so the calendar has been a really big adjustment for me. That's been probably my biggest takeaway, especially right now.
Kim Caldwell, head coach of the Marshall women's basketball team. We'll have more from her tomorrow on the program. Text line is 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Let's get back to your text predictions. Texter writes in and says, being a Herd fan, I always want Marshall to win. Marshall 35, Old Dominion 24. Another prediction, 35-28 Marshall. So a lot of people are picking the Thundering Herd to win on Saturday. And, of course, hopefully Marshall will send everybody home happy, homecoming. We'll have it for you if you can't go right here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. And we go on the air 12:30 in the morning. I can't wait. Actually be the afternoon at that point. Yesterday was fun for me because after a game on a Saturday, which started at noon, and then we're out of there, and there was so much daylight left, I felt like I had a full weekend. Even though we played on Saturday, we had a game. It felt, I don't know, I might be the only one here saying, look, I like the noon kick. I might be the only person here. But I like the noon kick because I kind of felt like we got everything we could possibly want here. Everything. We got a game. We got to get up early. We got to go. Just wake up and let's go football. That's it. That was your Saturday. Wake up, go do football, and then after the game, have a great weekend because the game's over and we can enjoy the rest of the weekend. So I like the noon. That's not so bad. 3:30 kick on Saturday. We'll be there high noon and change for our pregame coverage. That's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to select one of our lucky texters to have 2 tickets now to go to the game, Marshall Old Dominion. We're going to do that all this week. So tickets tomorrow, tickets Wednesday, tickets Thursday. Your chance to win all this week right here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. Thanks to Dan D'Antoni for checking in for a few minutes, getting us ready for the season and Hoops in Huntington. Also want to thank, of course, Kim Caldwell. Good talking to her. Charles Huff. We appreciate them and their participation with us today. Back tomorrow. It'll be Coach Huff's full presser. We'll get all the details on the game, and that's tomorrow. But until then, have a great night, everyone. Be back with you here tomorrow on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. Until then, good night.
WRBC Huntington, W227BS Huntington. This is your radio home for Pittsburgh Pirates baseball, ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.